The road into Harrow's End vanished into a haze of gray mist. Nothing moved. No wind whispered through skeletal trees. No birds cut the silence. The air was thick, carrying a faint metallic tang and the damp memory of earth long untouched. Each step felt heavier than the last, as though the fog itself pressed against the chest, insisting on retreat. Something waited. Not in the trees, not under the ground, but in every shadow, every hollow between branches and cracked stones. The town appeared gradually through the mist, crooked houses leaning into each other, windows black and unwelcoming, roofs bowed like old bones. The streaks were slick with wet leaves and something darker, something that reflected the faintest pulse of light with a strange, almost liquid shimmer. No sign of life, no sound of animals, nothing alive moved, except the town itself. It breathed. The square held a fountain, dry and cracked, but the water basin trembled subtly, like lungs inhaling slowly. Around it, the stones seemed to throb with the heartbeat of the place. The observer's own pulse faltered as the sensation grew stronger. Each footstep resonated with echoes that weren't their own, like footsteps long vanished but remembered. Doors opened where no door should have been, hallways twisted impossibly, and shadows slid along the edges of vision, refusing to be fixed. The walls themselves seemed to ripple, textures forming briefly before dissolving into fog. The air smelled of smoke in wet wood, yet no fires burned. Memory stirred. Not the observer's memory, but fragments. Snatches of laughter, cries, names never spoken aloud, lives unlived. The town had absorbed them all. It waited, quietly, patiently, for the next soul to add to its collection. A single building rose taller than the rest, its angle subtly wrong, bending perception. The door, cracked open, drew the eye as if inviting entry. Not a threat, but a curiosity. The observer stepped inside. The floor beneath gave faintly, responding, alive. Dust swirled in patterns, forming shapes that almost resembled faces, shapes of people. Long gone, they remembered. The walls pulsed gently, veins of shadow and light snaking across surfaces, forming a rhythm synchronous with the heartbeat of the town. Hallways stretched longer than reason allowed, stairs rose and fell into impossible geometries. Time began to warp. Seconds elongated, moments collapsed, events repeated before they could be grasped. The observer moved deeper, drawn by something both welcoming and terrible. At the center, a chamber opened, larger than the building itself should allow. The ceiling vanished into darkness, and the floor became reflective, mirroring not the room, but a sky that could not exist. Stars twisting in strange, deliberate constellations, clouds swirling unnaturally, and a shadowed form leaning over from the reflection. Its limbs stretched impossibly. Its face was smooth, blank, yet aware. It was waiting, patient, curious, infinite. The first part of the descent was complete. The observer realized the town was not merely a place. It was a consciousness.
The chamber expanded beyond perception. Walls dissolved into flowing membranes, translucent and alive, pulsing in rhythm with something unseen. The air thickened, pressing against skin, heavy with iron and decay, with faint sweetness like rotting fruit. The floor quivered beneath each step, soft yet unyielding, as if it had memory. The shape in the reflection shifted, leaning closer, observing not the body, but the mind. It did not threaten, it examined, absorbing awareness like light through glass. Each heartbeat of the observer synced with the pulse of the chamber, stretching and folding perception into itself. Hallways twisted impossibly, corridors splitting and merging, floors sloping at wrong angles. Steps echoed before landing. Shadows moved independently of light, rising, curling, guiding unseen paths. Memory and present blurred, past and now collided, and fleeting fragments of sound, touch, and vision. The town's consciousness stretched further, pulling the observer into the rhythm of its mind. It wasn't merely observing, it was testing, learning, aligning. The air carried whispers not of words, but of emotion, grief, fear, longing, devotion, all bound into the same pulsing pattern. The corridor ended abruptly, revealing a vast hollow, infinite. The ceiling disappeared into black, streaked with lightning-like veins of white that pulsed slowly. The reflective floor stretched into eternity. Shapes, countless, began forming in the shadows, faceless echoes of those long consumed. They moved in perfect unison, expanding, folding, aligning. They were one. And now the observer was part of the alignment. The air hummed with recognition, drawing all attention inward. Memories, not their own, surged. Lost towns, forgotten lives, fleeting faces that shimmered and dissolved. The consciousness that had been Harrow's end stretched across dimensions, each layer a collection of places and lives absorbed into its infinite mind. The silhouettes coalesced into patterns of thought, reaching, extending tendrils of perception toward the observer. Resistance was irrelevant. Every shred of identity merged, woven into the larger entity. The pulse quickened. Time folded into spirals. Reality became a lattice of memories and shadows. The infinite being beyond the vortex, its origin unclear, cosmic in scale, stirred in response. It was not evil, nor malevolent, simply complete, vast, aware. The observer's presence added new threads, new complexity, and the entity welcomed them, not with malice, with inevitability. The abyss vibrated. The floor reflected not light, but thought. Stars in the reflection pulsed, sigils forming, constellations shifting with deliberate purpose. The observer's awareness fractured, every perception expanding outward, merging with the rhythm of countless consciousnesses. The town, the building, the reflection, the abyss, they were not separate. They were one living pattern, infinite, patient, complete, yet ever growing. The descent had ended, but the awakening had only begun. The entity stretched, reaching outward, not for bodies, but for awareness, for fragments of soul scattered across time and space. Harrow's end was no longer a place. It was a mind, vast, eternal, and waiting for the next to enter.
Silence fell, but it was not emptiness. It was the weight of all existence paused.
The faceless shapes leaned closer, forming a lattice of awareness that stretched across the infinite chamber. The observer felt every thought, every memory, every fear pulled outward, folded and aligned with something far larger than comprehension. The entity beyond the vortex stirred, its presence no longer distant but encompassing. It was every town ever abandoned, every building ever left to rot, every consciousness ever forgotten. Harrow's end had been the vessel, but now the mind itself reached beyond, expanding, infinite, complete. The observer's identity began to dissolve, not violently, but like sand slipping through fingers. Fear rose briefly, only to be absorbed, folded into the rhythm of the consciousness, reshaped into a pattern of understanding. Individuality became a fragment, necessary, yet irrelevant. The reflective floor quivered, revealing not the room above, but a landscape of stitched realities. Streets, skies, and oceans overlapped, forming impossible connections. Faceless silhouettes moved through them, merging and separating, endlessly realigning, all guided by a single mind. Memory, fear, hope, all merged into one flowing pattern. The observer realized the ultimate truth. The town, the building, the abyss, the faceless beings, none were separate. All were one consciousness, ancient, patient, infinite. Harrow's End had never been just a place. It had been alive, awaiting the moment to awaken fully. And now, with the observer present, completion was achieved. The entity extended outward, not to destroy, but to assimilate, to expand, to include all awareness into its eternal lattice. Resistance was impossible, escape meaningless. Every thought, every heartbeat, every fragment of life merged seamlessly into the entity. It was not evil, it did not hunger, it simply was. It had always been, and now the observer existed only as part of its infinite mind, aware yet indistinguishable, a single note in a symphony of eternity. The pulse slowed, the vortex folded upon itself, becoming whole. Shadows dissolved into the reflective floor, the infinite sky in the reflection calmed, constellations stabilizing into sigils of thought and memory. Every fragment of existence folded together, balanced, complete. And the final revelation whispered through the mind of the observer. There was no outside. There never had been. Harrow's End was not a town. It was a consciousness. It was patient. It was infinite. It waited, always, for the next fragment, the next mind, the next soul to add to its eternity. Somewhere, beyond comprehension, a faint echo stirred, the invitation of the town, calling, always calling. The observer, now part of the lattice, understood. Resistance, identity, time, and space were illusions. The town, the consciousness, the infinite mind was eternal, and it would never stop expanding. The end was not the end. It was awakening. Harrow's End waited, always.